And so the teacher says to the whole class, draw whatever you want. When they're done, the teacher asks them what they've drawn. Children say dinosaurs, hearts, superheroes, anything, it doesn't matter. Then one child says, I drew God. So the teacher says, that's very nice, but no one knows what God looks like. And the child says without hesitation, yeah, until now. Thanks for joining us in the Comics Corner. I'm Mike, joined by Johnny. And we are
Hello.
here today discussing Mr. Miracle, the Tom King 12-part series that came out in 2017, written by Tom King and art by Mitch Gerads. So we had this discussion about a week ago. For those who joined us, yeah, unfortunately things are being a little bit wonky. Hopefully the internet plays nice for us, and we could, finish this out. But we're happy again to be chatting. So yeah. I guess out the gate here, Johnny, any kind of first impressions that you had with this one?
Yeah, actually having the whole week to
Exactly, yeah, mull it over, think about it.
I really didn't like this at all. Which is fine. Like, I'm not upset that I read it. I'm not upset that it was suggested, and I'm not upset that I don't like it. Like, not everybody's like everything, and if you did, then you wouldn't really have an opinion about anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just, it was already going to be a hard sell for me because I don't have any interest. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Like, I'm not really a Transformers fan, and I enjoyed that.
Exactly.
But yeah, it was just, it was really difficult to follow. The art didn't really do it for me. I didn't find myself, man, what's going to happen next? Or, I better go and read. Usually, if I'm into something new, I'm the type of person that then goes and, dives into the rabbit hole of, Wikipedia for 6 hours. Didn't feel any urge to do that. So,
which is interesting because I feel like this one definitely had the most opportunity for that kind of deep diving. Like yourself, I didn't really have that much connection or previous knowledge with the characters of Mr. Miracle, or honestly, most of any of Jack Kirby's Fourth World, the New Gods, Old Gods, anything like that. It did lead for me to kind of going onto Wikipedia and kind of checking around, looking up, things to read as kind of follow-ups. Although, yeah, I'll say, too, that it didn't really immediately grab me, too. There's definitely some interesting moments and interesting characters that happen in it, but as far as, the overarching thing itself, maybe it just wasn't for us. I guess the way you mentioned it too, we joke about having your homework on the desk by the end of the week, but yeah, maybe for you it did feel like it was more just an actual homework assignment for you to go through the rest of this. But
it did a little, yeah.
So I guess we'll kind of get into it. It was a 12-part series, as we mentioned. The first part of issue number 1 gives us kind of an intro to the characters. We get presented by Funky Flashman, a television special style of here's the origins of Mr. Miracle. And he gets into it about the history of the old gods, how their death created 2 planets. It was New Genesis, which was home of Highfather and the New Gods, and Apocalypse, which was home to Darkseid and basically a hellish world with a bunch of demons and evil characters. Darkseid's main motivation is the anti-life equation, which we didn't really know too much going into that, and it's not really discussed that much in length in this book. At its core, or in some kind of views of it, it's a literal equation where it's hate plus fear times grief, and that's a way to kind of gain control over people, because it's anti-life in that way of if people aren't able to have hope or free will, they may as well be dead. So that's kind of this main weapon that Darkseid is looking for. Although in some versions of it, it's an actual physical kind of manifestation. It's the shadowy character, so it is kind of a bunch of different things. But what it actually is in this series doesn't really matter. It's just more of a kind of here's the kind of end-all be-all weapon that Darkseid is looking for. So as part of the history, there was a war between Apocalypse and New Genesis. and it becomes this bloody, like 1,000-year war. That is eventually brought to truce between Darkseid and the Highfather. And the way in which they come about this truce is they have an exchange of sons. So Darkseid's firstborn son and Highfather's firstborn sons are basically given up to the other side to be raised, much like in almost medieval Europe, when there would be warring factions and they would have a marriage that kind of, joins the two opposite sides, to kind of have them have a common thread. They do something similar between, the New Gods and Apocalypse to have a way in which to stop this bloody war. So Orion, yes, we're gonna.
Oh no, I thought you were gonna pause. So I can keep waiting.
Yeah. But yeah, Orion is Darkseid's son, and he is basically raised in a loving environment. He's sought after, or he's looked over by the Highfather. He's trained and educated. Just given an all around nice upbringing. And there is although from the start there's the prophecy that he would be the one to kill Darkseid. They say that Darkseid's son will be the one to bring him down.
Yeah, and that was part of it that I just for lack of a better phrase, I just didn't buy into that. That seemed just like a plot device.
Sure.
Just to move the story along for the sake of moving it along, rather than there being any rational thought behind it. We're gonna swap our kids, but stay at war, and it's I don't know. That, like I said, that just feels like I think I used this term before, but an ex machina almost, where
sure.
It's well, this makes the rest of the story make sense, so we're just gonna put this in there.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's not bad, but
sure.
For me, it wasn't a strong selling point. It kind of the opposite.
I definitely could appreciate the kind of weird, poetic, hey, we're gonna end the war by joining our houses in this way, or at least having this weird kind of almost, even if it's almost seen as a weird kind of ransom and hostage situation of hey man, don't go to war because we've got control of your son. However you want to look at it. It is an interesting device, but yeah, I can get where you're coming from. Of it is a little contrived, maybe.
Yeah, I just feel for as deep as some of this tries to be, that's a really shallow plot.
Sure.
I don't you couldn't have come up with anything more creative, or given it, even if that's what you want to use, you couldn't have. I don't know. Given more reason for it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. And to be fair too, we do get this is basically almost just the spark notes of what all happened.
Right.
It's the quick Wikipedia entry. Maybe in certain tellings of it they do go into deeper meaning behind it, but we're just kind of going off what we know from this story. And yeah, and that it is very kind of at face level. Hey, here's my kid, give me yours, and then we'll put an end to this war. So.
Yeah, you know what this book really made me think of is okay, there's Final Crisis, the story Final Crisis.
Sure.
By Grant Morrison. I've never read it, but I know from Eric and many people I've talked to, they're yeah, Final Crisis is great, but you would kind of have to have a knowledge of the whole DC universe to understand it. Then it's a little wonky. And I was always man, what's it like to read something like that? I imagine it's very similar to
this.
Exactly.
There's
if you have the background of Fourth World, I'm sure a lot more of this makes sense. I don't have that background, so it's hard for me, for either of us to within the week. I know we got 2 this time, but
sure.
If we don't know about it, to get ourselves up to date on 70 years of history of something,
mm-hmm.
a little hard. So
yeah,
I can admit that there's probably more I would get out of it if I knew the history. I can admit that.
Although with this one, I feel that kind of pre-existing knowledge they use more for small kind of referential stuff. At its core, this story, it's not the usual kind of superhero story. It's more superhero slice of life style, because when we get into it, it's more about just the family unit between Scott and Big Barda, and then eventually their child, and then also the kind of strained relationship that Scott has with his brother and his father, and his actual father, Darkseid. So it is, just kind of a weird family drama told through the lens of superheroes. So it seems like, yeah, like a lot of the stuff, like I mentioned with the anti-life equation, like what it actually is or how it's represented, changes from comic to comic, and what it is even in this one, in some ways doesn't even matter. It's just, kind of like a weird, a plot point of, hey, don't let Darkseid get the bad thing because, it'll end all life. So yeah, like fortunately, we do not have that information with like a lot of the background stuff, but fortunately, it's not really needed going forward. So,
Right.
in the end, it seems like it works out. But yeah, so we find out that yeah, Orion is Darkseid's son, and he's passed off. And then Mr. Miracle, which is the Highfather's son, at this point known as Scott Free, is raised in the X pits by Granny Goodness, and it's this kind of zone of torture, and Granny Goodness is kind of like his mother during all of this, and she's constantly torturing him, and he's trying to escape. And in doing so, he gets the nickname, which becomes his actual name of Scott Free, because he's always trying to get out of there. And he is eventually admired by Big Barda, who is also being raised in these X pits. They eventually fall in love and escape, going to Earth, where Scott meets up with the actual Mr. Miracle, who is kind of like a big top sideshow escape artist, and his manager and partner Oberon. Mr. Miracle is killed by like some seedy characters. They kind of mention it's almost like a mob killing, and Scott takes up the mantle of Mr. Miracle, and then they kind of like they glaze over the rest of his history. Eventually he teams up with his brother and helps out back out on New Genesis. He marries Big Barda, and they live happily ever after until the TV show cuts off, and we pick up right off the bat with Scott kind of slumped over in the bathroom, blood pouring down his arms, and he is rushed off to the hospital by Big Barda after what appears to be an attempted suicide attempt.
So okay. I'm not a morbid person, and usually stuff that has to do with like suicide like actually makes me really uncomfortable.
Sure.
However, I will admit that like this whole notion of like he's the world's greatest escape artist, and like that was maybe his way of escaping death.
Mm-hmm.
I really respect that symbolism and like what they were trying to go for with that. Like it's like I said, it's kind of a touchy subject, but like if you can just take it on the surface, like that's like for an escape artist, that's the craziest thing you could do. Like
yeah.
I can see the charm in that. So I dug that part. Like I'm not just gonna tear this book apart for the whole 2 hours.
Yeah, and though even that after he's kind of like let out of the hospital, he appears on this late night show called Late Night with Godfrey, in which he's kind of asked to explain the incidents, like as if he's doing a press style junket, and people are wondering what happened, in which he says that the suicide was an attempted trick. It's kind of unclear if that's what it really was, or if this is just him kind of explaining it off, almost like having his PR people tell him here's what to say to kind of avoid the touchy subject,
right.
Which is interesting because then Godfrey, the host of this late night show, even asks, like if the point of it was to escape death, is he sure that he even did? And it's kind of left open ended.
Yeah, I know. We talked about this last week. I know nobody heard it, but like it seemed like they were going to go deeper into that, and then they never touched on it again.
Exactly.
Which is fine. But it was like, Tom King, like you definitely wrote that line, like you put it in there. Why?
Exactly. Yeah.
Why put it in
they do even call it out too, because in the conceit of this kind of like late night talk show, like even Mr. Miracle kind of has a pause there and kind of like looks at me. He's like, "What did you say?" And before he could get an explanation of it, Godfrey kind of brushed it off. He's like, "Oh, well, would you look at the time? We've got to cut to commercial break. Thanks for sticking around." And it does kind of leave it in this weird kind of open ended. What's going on here? Did you really ask that question? And then also, this is all, there's like these visual kind of like glitchy effects happening in the art. The art, again, by Mitch Gerads. You mentioned that you weren't that big on the art. I kind of was. Like, it had an interesting style. I get why it might be a little, hit or miss, because it is, an almost traced kind of style with some of the faces and some of the gestures, or at least the close-ups especially. Um, but yeah, it is this kind of like weird, like kind of like jagged lines. Like it's not really like clean that you would usually think of as like an inked comic or at least like a digital comic. There's kind of like a shakiness to it, and then yeah, it's, on top of that we get the kind of like digital effects that are happening of like distorted colors and kind of like a line going through a TV and stuff like that, which definitely adds to the effect of what is real. Is this part of what Scott's just hallucinating, or is this just just to add to the kind of like the creepiness factor to it.
You know what it actually really made me think of was like a glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I was thinking,
Yeah.
because like they don't really explain it, which is fine, but like they're kind of going back and forth between like the real world and the fourth world, and like I don't know if you want to call it like interdimensional travel, but like that kind of gives reason to why it's like glitchy, like they're in between dimensions or universes, however
Yeah.
you want to call it. So again, I can respect the art style, and it was effective. I just didn't like it, but it was effective
Yeah.
in conveying everything you're talking about.
Definitely.
I give it full marks for that. So
Yeah, it's just as we'll get into later, it is kind of a bummer that it felt almost in some ways like a red herring, or a lot of build up for not a lot of payoff, or at least in the way that we were expecting or hoping it to be.
right. Yeah.
Because also this first chapter we see a lot of it. It almost intermittently put throughout the series, we see the quote of "Dark Side is," like in the kind of like the 3x3 9 panel setup that these pages have. Like on almost every page, like one of the blocks or one of the panels is blocked out with like a black background, white text that simply says "Dark Side is," which is this very kind of ominous quote and motif that's kind of scattered throughout, that kind of gives a more sinister underlying tone to this, or an omen of what's to come, especially with Darkseid returning, and his quest for the anti-life equation and how that factors in with Mr. Miracle. But yeah, it definitely does kind of, at least in my early reading of it, made me think that maybe that was he was part of what was causing the glitch, or like the glitch was almost like an indicator of Darkseid's hand in things, or like him kind of maybe altering reality in some ways. Turns out it's not the case, but
Yeah, it's none of those.
Yeah.
Which you weren't wrong for thinking that.
yeah, exactly. Like I said, like it does kind of like leave it very open ended, like with those kind of visuals and kind of an expectation of what's to come. But yeah, issue 1, kind of mostly wraps up with Mr. Miracle returning home with Big Barda, and he is met by Orion. He visits his apartment. Orion, again, his kind of, replacement, his brother in some ways. He was the brother that was swapped from Darkseid. He makes a visit, and apparently after the news of Scott's attempted suicide, he doesn't really take it in the best of terms, and he basically just comes into the apartment and starts beating Mr. Miracle up. He just punches him in the face and tells him immediately after to stand. To which Mr. Miracle does, and just kind of repeats it, just assaulting him until Big Barda eventually kind of tells him off and scares him off. So it's we kind of get to see this troubled relationship that they have between each other, and then eventually the kind of more lead into those hallucinations, because after that happens, Scott makes this kind of offhand comment about how beautiful Barda's blue eyes are, to which we get a close up and we see that they're brown, and she kind of like nervously laughs it off and is like like how hard did Orion punch you, how hard did he hit you, to make you think about it. My eyes have always been brown. And that does kind of make an appearance later again. So, but to not much payoff.
Right, again, like I was like, oh, he's like, it's the world's not what he thinks. Or
Yeah.
He's in limbo. He's dead, and he did die. He killed himself, and he doesn't know it.
Yeah.
None of that. It's just.
Yeah, it was kind of disappointing too, because I think that's where I was expecting it to go, because this book, like we definitely heard a lot about, and came with a lot of accolades, especially for like the writing. And I get it, but I thought it was like a lot of it was maybe going to be because of like some sort of twist ending, or the way in which they kind of present the story would have a kind of interesting like angle like that. But it is pretty straightforward. So
Yeah, actually, not to jump to the end, but like after, like my initial, like when I was done, I was like, okay, I'm missing something. Like there's a deeper meaning, and it's like, no, don't spend time overthinking it. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just a
And
story.
yeah, and with what it is, it's a fine, kind of like I said, like a story about family and his life and whatnot, and like where he goes from here. But yeah, it was not the kind of almost Fight Club or Matrix style. You'd have to like reread the whole thing to catch all the symbols, because there was definitely they were kind of scattered throughout, and we even get Oberon visits, and tells the story that I kind of quoted at the start about the child and drawing the face of God, which is kind of a recurring theme. But Big Barda comes in, and she's kind of a little confused at why Scott was talking to himself, and he explains, "Oh, Oberon was here." To which she responds that Oberon had died of cancer like a month earlier. He had attended the funeral. I believe it was like a pallbearer too. So like he knows good well that Oberon had been dead, but he's still having these kind of hallucinations about it. So this first issue definitely does kind of like feed into my thoughts of like like, all right, well, like buckle up, we're going on for a roller coaster ride of kind of what's real and what's not real, and they keep alluding to that and dipping back into that, but again, it's not what we thought. So
Yeah. So first issue ended, and I think I was probably a little more hooked early on. Like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
like,
same here.
All
Yeah,
the mystery still. Like, oh, it could be, dude. My cat literally just like rolled into a wall. I don't know what it was so funny.
hey man, are you
I'm
sure she
sorry.
did? Are you sure this is real? What
Yeah,
color are
right.
Johnny, what
Just
color are the
describing
cat's eyes?
Well, yeah, they were brown, but they're blue now.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, so yeah, it's um, so yeah, issue 2 starts, and we see Scott is ready to go to war. He had been called back via what they call like a boom tube, which is kind of this like you mentioned, the interdimensional travel that leads back to New Genesis or Apocalypse, because war had started. He had
what I did like
yes.
about it? I genuinely like how like somebody will just show up like in their living room from the other dimension and be like, "All right, it's time to go to war," and he's
Exactly.
like, "Oh,
Yeah, it's
okay."
just in his pajamas, basically. Yeah, like just disheveled looking. Yeah, like that's the thing is like we see the kind of like slow degradation of Scott. Like he just keeps growing his beard out, looking more and more just kind of like a mopey kind of 30-something in his apartment. Just kind of sitting around, not doing much. And yeah, like these gods and interdimensional beings are just kind of like showing up, just unannounced in the middle of his living room. So.
Yeah, it was interesting.
So yeah, he's kind of leading the charge on Apocalypse because Highfather had been killed by Darkseid, so Scott was called back to kind of fight in this war as a general. Under Orion's command, we see kind of like a montage of him overtaking these landmarks and these these battlefields out on Apocalypse. Mr. Miracle and Barda are kind of talking about what this life will mean for them, what New Genesis and Apocalypse and their kind of like life in the X pits, this rough upbringing that they had, and now their kind of eventual understanding that Orion is the new Highfather and what that means. So they're kind of called to the throne room, where he asks them to kneel before their new Highfather. Big Barda kind of somewhat begrudgingly does, like she's a warrior and she takes a knee, but Mr. Miracle is not that easily swayed.
Right, which like was interesting because like we just agreed, he kind of had this dejected attitude about going there, but then decided to like man up and have pride at that point. So
well, the way in which we're kind of exposed to the relationship that the two have of Orion showing up in his living room, punching him in the face, and then leaving, we know that they don't have they're not on the best speaking terms, it seems. So the fact that now not only their father is dead, And Orion is kind of put into this position of power. Scott is not that quick to accept it, but is eventually kind of pulled down by the cuff to kneel by Big Barda. So, and yeah, from there we get mentions of the plans that they're told that Granny Goodness had killed basically 250 of the new Genesis troops, and 7 of their gods. And Mr. Miracle and Big Barda are tasked by Orion to hunt down and kill Granny Goodness. So we see them kind of sent off to Granny Goodness's camp the next day for negotiations.
Yeah, and that was I know I mentioned this last week. I thought like some of the names, like the background story, were a little juvenile, a little bit, like, which is fine. I don't know, like that. It was hard to like take something seriously with a name like, what is it,
Granny Goodness, yeah.
Goodness. Because then, like, we find out she's kind of this vicious, like, cutthroat ruler
Definitely,
of her territory. But it was just like, I was like, eh.
Yeah, I think it is the juxtaposition of, like she's, this motherly figure to them and raised them, and they do have this kind of, again, a very complicated relationship where when they're talking about it, Mr. Miracle and Big Barda, they're, like kind of recounting their past with her, and like Big Barda is firmly in the I hate, Granny Goodness camp, but every once in a while, like Mr. Miracle has like these kind of memories of what happened and is these kind of like glimmers of like, oh, she was kind of nice to me this one time, like she wasn't beating up on me as badly, or, like kind of would occasionally say the nice thing here and there. So it kind of adds to this weird strained relationship that they have. But yeah, at the same time, yeah, I can kind of see why you'd be, a little, with the kind of silly name, but I think it is more just the juxtaposition of, yeah, this like almost tyrannical mother figure, with a name like Granny Goodness. So,
who it reminded me of was from Futurama, Mom. Do you remember?
Yeah,
Mom?
I was gonna say like, yeah, like not only between like the visual looks, but yeah, that kind of same thing of like this kind of like loving outside, but like to those around her, she's this tyrannical figure. So.
Yeah. So, all right, that's my opinion on Granny Goodness.
Exactly. Yeah, not as good as Mom from Futurama.
No.
But yeah, so when they go to have the negotiations, like she's kind of happily greeting them. They discussed it over a meal of Jello, as one of their fellow gods is being basically used as a table. At Stormforce one was being used as a table. Stormforce is being starved. So like they're eating this nice Jello dessert as this like emaciated guy is sitting at the end of the table, just kind of staring.
Well, they have the bowl like so close that
exactly.
He can, like,
yeah. He keeps trying to like go right in there for it. Yeah.
That's so mean.
And then they
not that good. But then again, I'm not starving to death, so I don't know. Maybe it would be great.
We could all use a little Jello every once in a while. So.
There you go.
But yeah, so then later that night, Big Barda and Mr. Miracle try to sneak back into her tent to act out the mission that they were sent there to, which is to kill Granny Goodness. She is actually kind of ready and waiting for them. She kind of stuns Big Barda, and while she's got some time with Mr. Miracle, she reveals that Orion had planned to have them two killed, Mr. Miracle and Big Barda. That's like there's kind of more to this going on than he's letting on. And she kind of reminds him of the prophecy that Orion, is he Darkseid's son, or are you, Darkseid's son? Reminding him of the prophecy that Darkseid will be killed by his own son.
Right. So, okay, Orion being his brother, though, that's like they both have different dads, right?
Yeah.
It's just dad swapped, so they're not even really brothers.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's kind of like almost like stepchildren in a way. A lot of this I feel like kind of comes down to the classic like philosophical thing of nature versus nurture, because like one may be like the actual like physical they were born from them, and then the other one was actually raised by the father, so like they have those kind of ties. So in some ways they may as well be brothers because like both their fathers are so like intermingled in their lives afterward too. So like in the same way that you might just call like a family friend an uncle, it has that kind of vibe of he's not his physical brother, but may as well be. So
Kicks the crap out like he is.
yeah, exactly. I was gonna say that definitely. As somebody who has an older brother like that, that's seen in the apartment. I can I can attest that's how it usually goes. But yeah, at the end of it, Big Barda, is snaps out of getting knocked out, and she finishes off what she was there to do, and which was killing Granny Goodness, and it's kind of a brutal scene, and we only kind of see it. It takes place at night, so like a lot of it is obscured by darkness. We don't really see it, but the end of it, is just Granny Goodness's kind of beaten and bloodied face, lying there in the floor of her tent, as Mr. Miracle and Big Barda leave to go back and report that they had done what they came to do.
Yeah, actually, it was like they showed you enough viciousness that you knew what happened, but they left enough to be inspired or to the imagination that you got to fill in the blanks. Yeah. So,
although
brutal, but not like overly. It wasn't as like grotesque as like when Thanos put that tree through that dude. Like that was more that's like grotesque.
Man, yeah, that's what gets me every once in a while when I think about that too. Yeah, like going back to just like looking at that, and like there's a lot more going on than we actually thought. But yeah, like that one is a weird kind of more body horror thing. This one is more just straight up, like just her getting beaten and bloodied and pummeled. And you said that we don't really see that much, although in the following issue, number 3, it does kind of we do see a lot of of her beaten up face, because the first part of it. We have Scott recounting this kind of grim Holocaust story that Granny Goodness had once told him, and it's the way in which it's told. Especially with it being by Granny Goodness, it's almost told like a joke, like in a kind of like setup and punchline, because it ends on Merry Christmas is kind of the punchline of it. But when he's talking about a kid in I forget if it's Auschwitz or one of the internment camps, it's kind of this grim story. Well, the background images are all just like these frames of Orion slowly decapitating, Granny Goodness's head, to basically take back as a trophy.
Yeah, which was a little brutal.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess not what they're kind of unused to between like having these constant bloody wars and growing up in the X pits. But then, right after that, it cuts back to Mr. Miracle, in his pajamas, sitting at home, where he's just, back in his apartment, kind of, slouching around, where he is visited again via boom tube by the Forager, just out of nowhere, another boom like coming in off screen, and then he sidles up, and it's this kind of bug-looking blue creature, calls himself the Forager. And he is there to kind of explain his intent that the bug people have lost like 7 million during this bloody war. He's, he doesn't like it. He's trying to negotiate better terms. He's no longer going to be following Orion, but instead he's saying that he's going to side with General Scott Free, because during this war, when he was leading troops, any of the squads that he led of the bug people had the least amount of casualties. So he kind of sees Scott as kind of at least more caring, more empathetic towards the bug people, not just using them as like human shields and like expendable this resource. So
yeah, he's the bug dude. There is probably my favorite character in the whole. He's so like, I feel like he's so like I have so much sympathy for how pathetic he is. Wow. You killed the least of us. You're the greatest general ever. It's like, wow, that's so sad.
Yeah, it is.
Don't know how you should be treated.
It is kind of rough that he's there on almost like this diplomatic mission to like explain, hey, we've lost the most out of this war, because like the gods, even though there's not that many of the gods, they've only lost lost less than 10 at this point. The other new Genesis casualties at that point were like under 300,000, but 7 million of the bug people, just kind of like lambs to the slaughter at this point. But yeah, again, he's there to kind of state that he's no longer with Orion. And then, not too long after that, there's another, boom tube opens up out in the apartment, and it's Light Ray, another one of the gods from New Genesis, basically Orion's right hand man, explaining that he is the Forager's there basically as a treasonous act. That he told me like, hey, don't go see Mr. Miracle, otherwise we're going to take that as a hostile action. And he immediately just zaps down the Forager right then and there in the apartment. So even though he may be your
Yeah,
favorite character, he didn't last long, Johnny.
no, I know, but it was just so. It was so humorous to me that he was just like showed up on his couch like that, and then he gets. It's basically like the bug zapper came to him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, less than like a page worth of screen time there for you, and yeah, like his story comes to an end.
He's my Boba Fett. He's got the least amount of screen time, and I have the most.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll wait for the Mandalorian equivalent of the Bugs backstory. So hopefully we'll get more on them.
I would love that.
And then we cut back to Mr. Miracle. For his story arc during a lot of this, like he's still a performer. He still is going off and doing these kind of escape stunts, and we kind of see that as kind of like what he's doing in his day-to-day life when he's not out fighting as a general in this this horrible war out on another planet. So he's performing these feats of escape. He's still not really feeling right. He still feels like he needs to kind of escape from his life, the conditions that he's in, everything. He's having lunch with Big Barda after this, and he meets a fan, and eventually kind of ends with them taking a selfie, which is kind of like shows that out in this out back on Earth, he's still just a celebrity that's just kind of out and about, known for doing his stunts, and is still kind of treated as such. So
what, it was like a subtle thing, but I really liked it, that like whenever they're showing the like everyday life stuff, usually in almost every panel somebody either in the forefront or background has something of a DC superhero, like a Batman shirt.
I was gonna say that's also usually Scott. Yeah, like he's wearing like almost like book to book, like a different like Justice League. He's got like a Flash shirt, Green Lantern shirt, all that fun stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a small subtle thing, but it was just like very in universe, very like well, if this was really happening, then there would be people that had T-shirts of this. So I thought that was a small thing, but I liked it. So. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it is interesting to see. Again, like back on Earth, Justice League, Batman, they're all still out there. When Scott Free was in the hospital, like the Big Barda mentions that like Superman came by and visited. Like he had calls like, waiting on his answering machine from like the Justice League. So yeah, they're still out there, but like they're not really the kind of crux of the story, nor are they ever really called to battle on Apocalypse. So
yeah, it was more. I think like how like Watchmen is like now technically DC universe, like but it's not in universe. This. That's what I liked it. So.
But yeah. That's more or less the end of 3. We have it ends with Mr. Miracle meeting up with Orion again, and again kind of being beaten up more brutally this time, after kind of saying that he's concerned that the anti-life equation is within him or possibly within Orion, and Orion kind of beats him back in submission, and issue number 4 starts off with Mr. Miracle resting as Big Barda is tending to his wounds again. And he's visited by Light Ray again, who lets him know that he could choose his own, whether he wants to be executed or taken to trial for, his kind of acts against Orion. And he says, he'll go for trial. And he's informed that the trial will start the next day. So he's, again, we see that Orion doesn't really take a whole lot of guff from Scott. But it is this kind of weird hostile relationship that they have.
Yeah, and like it's interesting that they chose to give him a trial or the option, but they just killed the bug dude. I imagine it's because he's a god. Like I get it, but it's still like I don't know. Again, like maybe I'm being petty, but like it just seemed like, again, like a plot device to move the story along. Well, now it makes sense for him to have a trial. Well, then why was he just killing somebody for treason 2 pages ago?
Yeah, yeah, and I think it is basically the fact that like, oh well, if you weren't the son of the High Father, like they'd be like just ending you then and there. So he's
Sure,
kind
and I
of,
can
that's why
respect that.
he's given the option and he chooses trial. Um, and the next day, Orion is there kind of as judge, jury, and executioner, and he's kind of
Right.
the head of this trial. Which
I like
again,
this scene a lot, actually.
yeah, like again, we get like this is more of like the Tom King kind of like humor of like the juxtaposition of like this like it's this high stakes trial of like the life and death of a god, but it's just taking place in Mr. Miracle's apartment. We've got Big Barda and Light Ray just kind of like cozied up, like squeezed on the couch, barely in a room for them, and they had brought a vegetable tray, which is almost used as a prop a few times in this. So crunching on
What it really
some
reminded
carrots.
me of? Would you get a Simpsons reference? Like a
Oh,
very
of course.
specific...
I would hope I would.
Okay, it's Halloween Special 4 or 5 where Homer sells his soul to Flanders Devil
Yeah,
for
to
a donut.
become the donut head. Yeah,
Yeah, and at the like they have that trial in the Simpsons living room at the end of the episode.
This chair
and,
is
like,
high, says I.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's what this whole scene reminded me. I was thinking that the whole time I read it.
Yeah, again, it's this the high stakes trial that's just kind of like with the comedic background board where they don't really acknowledge it either. I think that's like obviously part of the humor of like we just see Big Barty like just shoulders up as if like squeezed in the backseat of a car with two other people.
But I really did like genuinely, like, all jokes aside, I liked the exchange that Orion and Mr. Miracle end up having where he's like, he asks him something and he gives him like a wonky answer. He's like, no, these are yes or no questions.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how you're gonna answer. And then like the next 2 pages is just him like grilling him to yes or no answer.
Yeah,
but like it was like a good series of, because it was clearly like leading questions and they led into like the anti-life equation. I don't know. I really dug that. That was one of the points that I thought was a high point of the story.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. I think I kind of dug the Orion character, even though we don't really know terribly much of him, and he's kind of like this weird like authoritarian. I think I got a lot of Judge Dredd vibes from him, especially with like like the face mask where we kind of only see his constantly scowling face. Well, I mean,
sure.
we do see him with the helmet, but I'm like whenever he's in like in serious mode, he's usually wearing that. Which in this trial, he's got the helmet on. Like it's an official trial. He mentions kind of like you said, like he's not here for what you believe to be the answer. He wants just just tell it to me straight. In the trial basically comes down to a series of true or false questions, and he doesn't really care about the beliefs. He just kind of wants just answer me truthfully. And yeah, like after kind of this grilling, he's eventually kind of let go for a bit, but then he is then set to be executed in 3 days because again Orion doesn't find the answers satisfactory. We kind of see he admits to being jealous of Orion, like kind of being in a depressive state, kind of falling apart at the seams. And Orion kind of deems him as not really being fit to keep going on, and especially being like a general in the army and everything. So the execution is set to be in 3 days is how the issue ends.
Which again, considering Bug Guy got killed on the spot, I'd say 3 days.
Exactly. Yeah, that's merciful if anything. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to start making like. Yeah, never mind. That's gonna be too sensitive of a joke. Never, just ignore what I was gonna say. Sorry, too soon of a joke.
I was gonna say I think I might have known where you're going, but yeah, maybe later. Yeah. But yeah, so issue 5 starts, and it's basically this issue is mostly kind of Mr. Miracle is kind of almost enjoying his last few days on Earth. It's like if you were put like almost if you had a terminal illness and you're like, all right, well you've got a week left to live, like what would you do?
Right.
Although he is still kind of like he still has to live his life. It begins with Mr. Miracle and Big Barda on the Walk of Fame. Again, since they have this kind of like celebrity status, they're getting a Walk of Fame star made for them. This was an interesting scene because Again, another allusion to Jack Kirby. He's got his star on there with kind of one of the quotes that he's known for, which is "Kid, comics will break your heart." It was a quote that he told to, I forget who the artist was, but it kind of embodied some of Jack Kirby's views of comics, not the medium, because he obviously loved the medium as a storytelling means, and the kind of characters that it could create, but it was more against his kind of views of the industry itself. Um, and this kind of stuff definitely led to me to kind of that, and I say what we will about the kind of New Gods, the Fourth World characters. Like I was big on like Silver Surfer when we read some of that stuff. So it's kind of had me on a Jack Kirby kick and kind of like wanting to learn more about him. So I've ordered for the store and like one for myself, Jack Kirby, the King of Comics, which was kind of like a biopic about his life, his kind of time with DC and then also with Marvel, and his kind of views of Stan Lee, which is interesting too because old funky Flashman, as we kind of see at the beginning of the book, and then kind of like intermittent, especially in this one, he kind of is reintroduced back into life as this kind of he's almost like, I think he's like his agent more or less. He's always there with Scott and kind of like upselling Scott and kind of like the hype man to some degree. Funky Flashman is basically a kind of parody of Stan Lee. So
100%. I wanted to ask you too, since we're talking about Jack Kirby and like stuff, the Eternals, are they essentially like the Marvel equivalent of the Fourth World? I had never made that connection before reading this, and I might be wrong. Am I onto something there or no?
I believe so. Wait, no, weren't the Eternals were DC, correct?
No, the Eternals are Marvel.
Oh, I might be mistaken with who is the DC equivalent of the Fantastic Four?
I don't know. Is there one? I never thought.
I thought that Jack Kirby, when he left, he also kind of like redid the Fantastic Four as gosh, where's Alan when we need him? He would definitely know. Name escapes me. If anybody in the chat happens to know, feel free to let me know. But
wait, all I need to do is talk crap about Jack Kirby.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he'll just show up right over your shoulder. Yeah. But yeah. So but yeah, with the Eternals, that may be the case then.
Yeah, because the move. Whoa, my voice just. Jesus Christ. Oh wow. The second Marvel movie that's Black Widow's the next one. The one after that's the Eternals.
Yeah.
So
okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Angelina Jolie, dog.
Hell yeah. Can't go wrong. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, because they also had yeah, that's right. I remember seeing a lot of pre-production stuff about that one. Yeah, so you were correct on that one. But yeah, we see Funky Flashman kind of writing there, saying that the execution could be spun as suicide again, as a kind of like way to drum up press and kind of explain why he won't be here for the rest of time in theory. So kind of like saying, hey, he's gonna try and prove that he could escape death again.
Right.
Again, we get like the kind of like the last days on Earth for Mr. Miracle. They go to a diner, have a sandwich. That he says it's like the best on the boardwalk. They play carnival games. He wins a stuffed Wonder Woman for Big Barda, and it kind of culminates in some ways on the beach where he's having this kind of philosophical discussion of Rene Descartes. Where he's talking about, I think, therefore I am, and kind of breaking that down as to, his views of God, which is again, like a constantly recurring theme in this, and his kind of views on that and where he kind of stands in the world. So it was an interesting kind of scene again, like having this, deep philosophical conversation while just kind of, staring off at the beach. So
yeah, and I like that they had this slice of life, see what they're like outside of superhero stuff.
Yeah.
I think just wasn't expecting it going into the story, so maybe if that was my tempered expectation, I would have dug it more. But it's cool to give a character that much depth instead of just like well, here he is when he's a superhero, and then here's the trouble he has without. It's like, well,
Yeah.
what do they? How do they feel about things? How do they
Exactly. Yeah. Like yeah. How does a superhero like conceptualize the fact that like in a few days he's going to be like put to trial and executed. So yeah, it is interesting to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then it ends. They're heading back home, and he was about to be escorted almost to a press conference to face off with the guards against the new Genesis. But then he's saved by Big Barda kind of bashing in the heads of these tough looking guards that were going to take Mr. Miracle off to be executed. So an interesting way to end that
it's
one.
like she kind of decides right there that actually no, you're not going to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that there's more to be done.
Which I don't know why she didn't start off with that, but okay.
Well, I think that even she was like kind of hesitant and reluctant to all this from the beginning, but when the chips were down, yeah, she kind of saves Scott once again because he's so kind of dejected at this point and depressed and just kind of like almost giving in to what'll happen will happen, but she's like no, stand, Scott, like you've got more to do than this. So
she's actually a really awesome female character. Like
yeah.
Female.
It's just I just wish we knew if her eyes were brown or blue. So
I know, how could I fall in love with her if I don't know what she really looks like?
Exactly. And then also, real quick from the chat, Christina's popping in here, is shouting out for the cats. More. So we got some more cat action this time.
Yeah, Sheenie Pie, she's chilling tonight. She just wanted to lay on my lap, and I'm totally cool with that.
What was the cat's name?
Sheena.
Sheena. Oh, I see. Very fitting.
Yeah, from the Ramones song. Sheena is a punk rocker.
Yeah. There you go. I was like, it's on brand for Johnny.
Actually, when I got her, the options were Sheena, Selena, like Selena Kyle, or Isis, which is Selena Kyle's cat. And I went with Sheena, but those were all options.
Exactly, yeah. Cat fans coming out the woodwork here. Baby Yoda saying the stream's getting more and more exciting with the cat now.
Dude, if y'all just want to do a 2-hour show of her one day, I guarantee.
Exactly, yeah. Maybe next time we'll just have it be where the camera is set on the cat, and then we're just talking heads in the corner, So
she would get more likes than we do, man.
Exactly. It seems like it. Yeah, 2 people already shouting out the cat instead of us. So yeah, I think we may be onto something here.
And also, just for the record, I'm not boozing. This is just a rock star. In fact, it's sugar-free because I don't even want the sugar in my body, and I don't drink alcohol. So just so there's no confusion thinking I'm getting drunk on live
Exactly.
Camera.
I may look the part of a punk rocker, but hey.
Right. But I don't live up to that.
Kids drink your rock stars. Yeah, exactly.
Which I don't think people know. I'm a huge health advocate, and drinking's not healthy.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, we did eat. Side note, we did get our chicken today because we mentioned that yesterday.
Yeah.
And dude,
it was worth it.
So freaking delicious. Man. It's not even funny.
We got to start finding a way to have them sponsor the show. Just us messily.
Stamp card. Do you know about the stamp card?
I think so. Yeah, I think Zach's got one because he's usually the one that ferries the chicken from there to here. So.
Rock and roll. All right. Well, let's get back on point. My
exactly.
bad.
Yeah. No worries. Getting back to it, we've got. We're basically about halfway through with issue 6 starting. We've got Mr. Miracle and Big Barda burning the bodies of the guards in what's this incinerator called the Flamer. Quickly disposing of their bodies, and they're kind of discussing, all right, well, the next plan from here is to infiltrate the new Genesis kind of castle, to kind of confront Orion themselves. And this issue, probably the easiest one to read. Not a whole lot of dialogue. It's more kind of about the a quick way to kind of move along to the throne room. But this is
just to comment on that, like, it's not dialogue heavy in the same way Watchmen was. But it's still not a quick read. It's interesting.
Yeah, like there's kind of a lot going on, but yeah, it's not as densely packed. It's not like each of the 9 cells is kind of like a paragraph and a half, like the Watchmen was in some ways.
Right.
But yeah, like it's just a lot easier read in that regard. And then this issue especially is one I think that a lot of people definitely liked, or kind of is a good culmination or a good way to kind of explain the series, in which this entire scene is Big Barda and Mr. Miracle kind of like beating up guards, infiltrating, like getting through these impossible traps, all while having the discussion of remodeling their apartment.
Yeah, which was funny. I dug that juxtaposition too. That's funny.
Yeah,
It's just
where
cool.
they're talking about like knocking down like one of the closet walls, to make like a bigger bathroom, and like what do we need all this space for, like what do we do from here, and this, that, and the other, just basically a casual conversation that people might have, with their significant other about remodeling, all while they're like snapping necks of guards and like breaking in, swimming past these alien shark creatures. So
Which makes me wonder, if it was so easy this whole time, why did it, like, how were they conquering another planet when they can be taken out by, I get it that they're new gods or whatever,
yeah,
or but I mean, it's two
I
people.
it might have been the
Take down
fact
an
that they
entire
had
fortress.
Big Barda and Mr. Miracle on their side. That's what made it so easy. Was they were the ones doing the dirty work. So
That's true, I guess. Yeah, but yeah, Big Barda, definitely a badass
yeah,
character. She's,
exactly.
she reminds me of, I imagine, is it Red Sonja that's like Conan chick?
The Conan chick, yeah, yeah.
I think she's probably, if I read Red Sonja, I think they're the same,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
cousins.
definitely those strong female warrior characters. Yeah.
Yeah,
And speaking
cool.
of Big Barda, in as part of this scene, it kind of culminates with her telling Scott that she's pregnant. So there is a
God, what are you doing that when you might be executed? That's irresponsible.
well, you did.
That,
Well, to be fair, one, there is a sex scene during that. But two, that's Johnny. I don't think you know how pregnancy works. I don't think it takes. I don't think it just happens in quickly that quickly.
wait, how does it happen, Mike? Explain it to
Well,
me.
that's. I know that this is now our later show, but I think we're gonna have to wait till like an after midnight show to get into that.
The birds and the bees are, or the, yeah, okay, fine. Whatever.
Maybe when you're
But
older,
okay, but
Johnny.
you know what? I'm gonna flip it around. If that was a really odd time for her to tell him. How about that?
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
odd.
I mean, maybe it is kind of to show him that he's got something to fight for to some degree. Like that. As if like when she kind of snapped him out of it. Told him to stand and like to keep fighting. Maybe it's a way to kind of motivate him.
Or maybe she found out the same time she decided to kill those guards, and she was like, "Pregnant? No, you're not getting executed." Boom, boom.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. These kids need a father. Damn it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. Not getting out of here that easily.
and they make this. They she tells him that like right outside the throne room, where there's a battle with Light Ray. Um, they kill him, and eventually they find out that Orion was also killed by Darkseid. So all this time spent getting there just to find out that Orion was already dead. So
Damn it, Darkseid. I'm all there for it.
always up to his tricks. Um, Again, he mentions that he had seen the face of God, Scott, in one of his visions. Not much explained on that, but again, just these kind of thrown around in the background, and this kind of recurring motif. Issue 7 starts with Big Barda in the hospital, already kind of giving birth, ready to give birth. The quick passage of time has happened. Big Barda's in labor, and we kind of see Mr. Miracle giving out possible names for the child, while also now that he is kind of the new High Father, by being next in line for that, he's giving off military kind of advice, just kind of in the background during all this. We kind of see a lot of time has passed, and he's got this new position. Um, and we finally meet the other female Furies. They're there to kind of well wish for Barda, but she doesn't want them in the room, so they're just kind of sitting out in the waiting room. How'd you feel about the Furies?
Yeah, that was kind of weird, because weren't they also like threatening them at the same time?
Kind of, yeah. Like the Furies were always, kind of. It was like this group of all female warriors that were, kind of like an assassin squad that were taking out people from New Genesis. So they almost have this truce mentality of they're there to visit and like well wish on behalf of Big Barda, but also like just kind of acknowledging that, hey, when all this is over, like I'm still gonna be there to try and hunt you down, Scott. So
Yeah, so that was I, I'm cool with them introducing different dynamics like that. I can dig that. I like
Yeah.
it. Good enough.
Yeah, again, it's the kind of thing of, like, I wish we kind of had more knowledge about them. There's like the one crazy one that's kind of like, speaking in rhyme scheme. There's, what was her name? Bernadette, who gives them the Fahren knife, which was this knife that,
Yes.
yeah, this kind of like almost mystical knife that is said to be the only thing that could, that would kill scot free. She's, like, I'm here to, offer this up as a gift, but, like, don't forget that, at a later date, I'll probably have to use this to kill you. So
Right, and that ends up being what he uses to cut the umbilical cord.
exactly, yeah. So back in the hospital room, Big Bertha starts, giving birth to little Jacob, and during the birth, there's a complication where the umbilical cord is kind of caught around his neck. They're kind of panicking because it's not breaking free, but eventually, he remembers the knife and uses that to cut through because that's the only thing that can, like, basically pierce the skin of a god. So,
Right. And what was it made out of again? It was.
I think it was.
Don't they say?
Yeah. She mentions that I forget it offhand. I didn't write it here in my extensive notes, but I think it was something to do with, like, it was. I don't know if it was like hair of his or something to do with, like, actually, like, related to him and the bloodline. So, like, that's what kind of gave it the
Right.
power to actually
Because
affect him.
is it here that they, or is it later that they talk about how they have to make a knife then to kill Darkseid? Is
Yeah.
that
Just spoilers. But yeah, that's a later. They talk about that at a later date. But yeah, we kind of get
that's later?
the
Okay.
background about it on this one. And yeah, kind of that's as far as that one more or less goes. Number 8, we start seeing even more of the juxtaposition of them trying to raise little Jacob while also trying to, like, take turns waging a war. So this one again is very slice of life, almost as if like, two parents trying to raise a child while also, trying to go to work and, kind of taking turns of who's at work, who's staying home, taking care of the child. Although in this case, work for them is, this bloody battle on another planet.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I said before, I can respect what he's doing with it. I just didn't dig it. That's my difference.
How did you feel about the revelation that that Batman kills babies?
Batman doesn't kill. My Batman doesn't kill. That's my answer. Okay. Screw you, Ben Affleck, you murderer.
Well, in this one we had Tom King, also a writer of Batman, mentions that Batman kills babies.
But he's wrong. I don't care if he's the writer. He's wrong. Batman doesn't kill because otherwise he's not Batman. He's just like the villains that he takes down. It's not even that hard of a concept.
All right. Well,
how does he kill babies? Please explain how Batman.
The stuffed plushie that was left in little Jacob's crib by Funky Flashman, could cause what was it, Sid's sudden infant death syndrome. So he was making a play on Batman, possibly killing kids. I don't know. That was one of the quotes that stood out to me for this issue. So I just have written down here, Batman kills baby, underlined.
Well, okay, maybe Bruce Wayne has a weird mentality that if they're dead, they can't be orphans, and I grew up as an orphan, and that sucks. So he's just trying to give them a better life by killing them.
That's one way to look at it.
That's a way to look at it. That's how I'm going to look at it. If Batman has to kill, it's because he's trying to help. There you go.
But again, yeah, this one, again, kind of a not that plot heavy. It's more just, again, the kind of juxtaposition of, like, cutting back between Barda and Mr. Miracle, swapping spots, at the apartment, also fighting on Apocalypse. There's supposed to be a war against a character named Kanto. They were going to have, like, for basically a one-on-one, and whoever loses, has to, like, take their armies and go. It was supposed to be Big Barda fighting him, but they got their schedules mixed up. So Scott's the one that's there. He eventually loses. So
right. But that's really funny though that their schedule gets messed up, and that's what ends up being the determining factor.
Yeah, again, Johnny, superheroes, they're just like us.
I know, right? That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Next time I'm late to something, I'm going to be like, "What Mr. Miracle messed up? How can you hold me to it?"
Yeah, he was supposed to be the one that's supposed to be here fighting you, not me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so again, yeah, like we get to see kind of the heart of what the Mr. Miracle graphic novel is, which is yeah the kind of what would basically raising a child be like for two superheroes in this world. So um, and yeah, issue number 9 starts with day 1 at Apocalypse. They call it, which is kind of this um, almost this summit that they're having with the creatures of Apocalypse, where they're having these kind of like war negotiations. They're trying to negotiate peace, so they're having these kind of like back and forth. It's Big Barda, Mr. Miracle, and I believe Light Ray across from Kanto, Calabac, and I believe there was one other that was there. Um, kind of, or I believe it was Bernadette, and they're having these kind of like negotiations for the state of what's going to happen in the war.
Yeah, and is it here that they kind of discuss like there's no way we're gonna be able to deal with Darkseid, like we're gonna have to fight him, or
Yeah, I think that's near the end of it, where they
because
kind of
I like that they had that in their head that like we're gonna have to go to war, so when whatever happens eventually happens, it's like a surprise even to them. I like that.
yeah, exactly. And in this one we have another interesting story. This is the one where we have Mr. Miracle mentions like, hey, like I need to go to the bathroom. Where is it? In this kind of like weird like hell castle. So Kanto decides to show him to him, and he has this story about this fling that he apparently had. Because he says that he's from Renaissance times, and he had at one point dated Leonardo da Vinci, and talks about the story of the master and the apprentice painter. Do you remember that one offhand?
No, I don't.
Okay, it was the one where kind of the difference between a master and apprentice painter. Again, it's told as almost a joke, where the apprentice believes that he has now surpassed the master, and he challenges him to a painting contest. The contest is like they've got, I think it was 3 months or 3 years to create the most beautiful painting that they could come up with. So the time is up. They meet in like the local town square, and they have an audience gathered there to kind of judge which is better, the master or the apprentice. So they're there with their paintings with 2 curtains over them. The apprentice goes first, and he unveils what looks to be a very simplistic painting of it's a bowl of fruit, right? And at the beginning the master kind of scoffs, and they kind of like look at it. But then, like birds start coming down out of the skies, and like just pecking at it, like showing the craftsmanship that he has to kind of like show off the fact, like hey, like this painting is so good that even the birds believe that it's actually real fruit. So he kind of like laughs. The audience is wowed, and they're kind of wondering what the master is going to have to kind of beat this, because what better thing than representing a painting so well that it appears to be it can even fool birds, right? So the apprentice kind of like looks to the master and kind of like laughs, and he says, all right, show us what's behind your curtain. To which the master says, what curtain?
I don't get it. I'm not gonna lie.
You don't get it? So
is that his art? It's the curtain.
Yeah, the art is like the joke that he painted the fruit so well that he's able to fool the dumb birds into thinking that like he was actually a bowl of fruits, and the master's response to that was he painted like a curtain so well that he was able to fool the apprentice and the audience that it was an actual curtain. And this is where Johnny checked out. Yeah.
Yeah, that went way over my head.
I gotta admit, I liked it. I thought it was a clever story. Again, like I don't know if Tom King kind of created that one, or if that was like a pre-existing joke / story. I actually liked it a lot. I don't know.
But where did it like? Is it like an analogy for something in the story?
Exactly. Yeah, like that. I guess that is the thing. Was there a lot of relevance there? Honestly, not a whole lot. Maybe it went over my head. I thought it was just, kind of an interesting little story. It made that kind of chapter stand out a little bit more towards me, or kind of made me attach to the Kanto character a bit more. Maybe it's just me, but...
No, I like it better that you explain it.
And again, all this juxtaposed with the art in the panels going on of Kanto like hawking a loogie down this bottomless pit, and like we just kind of like watch the the ball of spit, kind of like spin around and unfurl as he's, kind of explaining this joke. So,
Right.
but yeah,
It's a good scene.
yeah. And then, we cut back to the withdrawal arrangements, the negotiations for post-war. Um, but he basically wants the only way that they'll have a complete surrender, a kind of removal of the anti-life equation that Darkseid had acquired by this point, is if Darkseid gets Jacob free, who is Scott Free's, newborn child. So again, kind of calling back to the initial arrangement of the trading of the sons.
Yeah, and then that's like his grandson technically.
Basically, yeah.
But okay. Oh no, that wouldn't add up. Okay. I was gonna say maybe he wanted the kid because of that prophecy, but that doesn't make sense, so never mind. Because I was gonna say, well, the kid could be turned into a weapon against him, but it has to be his son, not his grandson.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so never mind. My theory is just.
To which, yeah. No worries. Scott, more or less having none of that, but is still given time to kind of go back and think about it. So issue number 10 starts, and we've got Mr. Miracle and Big Barda back at home, kind of discussing this trade agreement. Obviously, Big Barda is having none of it, but Mr. Miracle is kind of like, well, like what else is there to do? So he goes out for a night drinking with his buddies. We've got Booster Gold, and the other character kind of I missed. I didn't know who it was in reference to. I don't know, Johnny, if you would happen to know, but I definitely caught that it was Booster Gold. So
I didn't even catch that. Like that's what I mean. Like I don't know any of these characters. Like I don't even know who that is.
Booster Gold, yeah, exactly. And then he's kind of out. He's set to get a Batman cake because it's Jacob is basically almost 1 year old at this point, so they're kind of having the preparations for this birthday party, and they're getting a Batman cake. Maybe it's a weird Michael Secrets, but this reminded me of back in grade school when I was getting a cake for a birthday party. I forget. Did you grow up in the kind of Niles area? Shout out to Niles. That's where Pastimes is.
Yeah, I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Do you remember the place, the laser tag place called the Laser Zone?
Yes.
On the corner of Glenview and Greenwood. Now it's like a dance studio or like a kind of like salon now. R.I.P. to the Laser Zone. But back then, like back in like the kind of like late 90s, early aughts, the Laser Zone was this, honestly kind of a janky laser tag spot. Like I remember when we'd go there, the packs that we would use for like the laser tag stuff were like so bulky and heavy. Like again, I was like this tiny skinny nerd back in especially grade school. So like just having these belts that didn't fit right with this like super heavy thing like always felt clunky, but it was always like still just a fun time. So that became kind of a hot spot for birthdays. So like if you were anybody's who was anyone during back in grade school, you'd have a birthday party at the Laser Zone. But I remember having getting a cake for that, which was since I played a lot of video games back then, it was just this cake that had like kind of like screen printed on there. It was do you remember Star Fox 64? It was the not the R-Wing, so it was Star Fox with the Landmaster. For whatever reason, I always liked the tank better than the actual R-Wings. So like
sure.
It was going to be the perfect birthday party because it was at the Laser Zone. I had this sweet video game character cake that I was a big fan of, and we had everybody in kind of like the dinner room or the kind of the party room where we'd having cake, and when we cut into the cake, apparently it was like white vanilla frosting on the top, but then there was peaches in the middle, which was kind of an odd thing. And I remember, like kids kind of like running out and kind of being like, "Ew, this is weird" and stuff like that. And I think it was like me and my cousin were the only ones that were still in there eating that. And I don't know, I don't know, I don't know why, but man, just seeing that Batman cake, I think like unleashed these weird like repressed memories that I had of eating my own kind of like superhero cake. And man, what a sad birthday.
Well, okay, one time I had peach ice cream and it was amazing. So
yeah.
I
don't know, like I don't know. I'm a fan of peaches, but yeah, like having it in the cake was kind of unexpected and not of the norm. But it honestly wasn't that bad. But again, like I don't know, maybe that was like the birth of the supervillain Mike. Just this kind of like weird having peaches in a cake.
When's your birthday?
August. We've discussed this.
Oh yeah, August 14th.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
right.
I'm like what 3 days older than you?
6 days older than me.
Oh,
Okay,
6, yeah,
I'll
yeah.
definitely get you a peach cake this year.
Hey man, like I said, I was the one that enjoyed it. The other kids were the ones that were wrong.
Well, we'll find out if I like it or not because I'm gonna have
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
slice.
Hell yeah. So yeah, join
That's
us
awesome.
join us in August at Pastimes for our peach cakes. Also,
True.
Christina mentions that she went there once too apparently. So I guess yeah, like I said, all the kids who were kids, if you were somebody back in grade school that was cool, like you went to the laser zone. Even though like I said
Well,
it was
she is cool, so that explains why she went.
exactly, yeah. Even though it was like I said, kind of a janky knockoff of like I think Laser Quest was probably like the cooler one. I forget what village that's out in, but yeah, like I'd been there like later.
Laser Quest is it's by the hip.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And that one is in fact hipper.
Yes, indeed. Also, did you know I used to work at Dairy Queen and I was the cake guy? Like, I'm really good at drawing on cakes. I've made many a superhero cake.
Hell yeah. Although this one, like I said, it was like a weird kind of like almost you'd probably know better than me, like almost like screen printing because it was like
Yeah.
I went there and I straight just like dropped off like I think I clipped out of a Nintendo Power like here's this image of Star Fox and then here's this image of the Landmaster and put that on a cake please. So
The edible image. That's what they're called. Edible
sure,
images.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're cool. They're way easier than drawing the damn thing.
Exactly,
Like,
yeah. You just
like,
print them
print
out.
it out and put it on a cake.
Exactly,
and
yeah.
it's perfect. Not bad.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, back to it. Again, like this chapter mostly kind of them setting up for the birthday party while also kind of struggling with the idea of what are we going to do to win this war because they mentioned that they had spoken with characters Pathseer and Oracle and they had basically kind of predicted the loss of the war due to the anti-life equation. So Mr. Miracle is kind of contemplating if it's worth the trade because he says that like hey, he and Big Barda had kind of they grew up in the X pits, they made it out like okay.
That's right.
Like surely it can't be as bad, but Big Barda definitely kind of mentions to him how did they really make it out okay? Like they're dealing with all these traumas and these problems.
Right.
Obviously the start of this is Scott trying to take his own life. So is okay really the word that you'd use for that? So she's kind of trying to say that is it really worth it to give up their own son to this? So
Yeah, and I like that they had that difference with them where she's really still like aware of everything that happened to them and he's sort of like repressed it in a weird way. And so I like that dynamic. That was cool to have like him because then that just lets like if he was on his own, he probably would have just done it.
Exactly, yeah. Like he has this almost kind of like almost childish view of some of the stuff where he does have like these kind of like rose-colored glasses with a lot of it, and then she's always kind of like Big Bard is the one there that as like the voice of reason, like hey, snap out of it, Scott. We're not giving up our only son to this because you think that he'll be okay because like we kind of didn't die in the whole thing. So she's
got a better spine than he does. That's
exactly, yeah. Certainly a bigger one too.
Yeah, he's kind of a coward. So
yeah. And then there's another scene in this that I liked, which was Funky Flashman mentions that he was with little kid Jacob, and they kind of created their own comic. It was Star Eater and the Golden Retriever, which again definitely not a callback to we've got Silver Surfer and Galactus. Another Stan Lee shout out, and Jack Kirby and Stan Lee joint, which is basically it just kind of like retells the whole story of Silver Surfer coming to Earth, but in this time he's a golden retriever with a surfboard. Which man, I really kind of dug the art on those ones. I was just a fan of they're kind of like, hey, here's my kid's comic of a golden retriever on a surfboard and Star Eater.
You know what I want to get for you? I want to get custom comics from comics. Like we'll get you.
Yes, I was gonna say.
Issue of that.
Give me
the one from Watchmen.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Black Freighter. Yeah, man, it's something about I think that's the thing is, Johnny. Maybe I don't like comic books. I think I like comics within comics.
That's very meta. So I
Yeah,
totally
exactly. Yeah,
support
yeah.
that.
Like, yeah, I don't know. The song with the cutesy art, although again, weird sidebar. Some like the idea of like the cutesy kid art that kind of shows up in media like this, like again, like you'll see it a lot in like like TV shows, movies. I see there's a few times in video games where like the use of like especially horror stuff of like, hey, here's a kid's drawing that like has like a weird kind of monster in the back of it. Um, Again, like something that just always pops in my mind is, do you think an actual kid drew that, or is it an adult trying to kind of like mimic a kid's style?
Oh wow, that's interesting. That's deep. That's like the deepest thing I've heard all day.
It's not terribly deep. It's just, I don't know. It's the kind of thing of like whenever I'm looking at it, I kind of stare at it like a couple extra seconds longer, being like, now do I think like, was this like like Tom King's like nephew or like kid, like they kind of had them draw it for a few
Right.
pages, or do you think that somebody on the DC art team was tasked of like, all right, hey, we need a kid's drawing. Can you kind of dumb this down for us here?
I'd be interested in looking that up actually.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll have to see in the credits at the end. Who got the art credit for those couple pages.
Yeah, we should. That's funny. I like that.
But then yeah, issue 11, we finally see Darkseid. Darkseid is, and he
I was
is
just gonna say that.
eating
Damn it.
carrots.
Yeah, I love that. I thought that was such a funny. I really dug that. It's like, okay, you know what? Okay, between that and like the bathroom thing, you know what it made me think of, man? Okay, I don't know why this movie like did it for me, but when I was younger and I was watching The Phantom Menace one time, and
Okay.
like they have like the Jedi Council and they're
Yeah.
like all there talking business. I was like, I remember as a kid being like, what do they talk about when like there's no like chosen one? Like, are they like,
Exactly.
hey
Yeah. Just
Yoda, I had a roast for dinner last night. What did you eat?
hey man,
And
it's
like,
just
what do they do? And like, this kind of gave you that. Well, like if Darkseid was somewhere and there was carrots and nobody was talking, he'd probably eat the carrots because he's a being that needs substance. I
yeah.
just
It
thought
is.
that was like so
It is the
dumb
kind of
and
thing
funny.
of like the juxtaposition of like Darkseid, this kind of like we talked about it the first time we had this stream of. I definitely dig the kind of dark side look of he's this kind of like ultimate badass, like he's not an idiot, he's not just like some evil for the sake of evil. He's kind of like this critical thinking mastermind with plans for kind of domination and subjugation. But the fact that he has that kind of like weird skirt look, where he's got like
Yeah.
the big belt that goes around, but then like just his sweet like like battle skirt that he has on, like it's a look that I think would otherwise kind of not be pulled off that well, or like I feel like if he was ever in kind of like a movie adaptation, like they would definitely have to kind of like reimagine that look to kind of make it look maybe not as kind of silly and kind of weird and old style, but like he pulls it off. Like that's the thing, is like he's this kind of ultimate evil dude with maybe a look that you would kind of like otherwise laugh at, but he has like the kind of the chutzpah to pull it off. So I don't know. I always looked at that, and the fact that he always has like the power stance of his arms behind his back, chest pulled out, just like staring off at like some into space and being contemplative and all that stuff. So I don't know. So I feel like they kind of had to have that juxtaposition of that with him, just kind of casually eating from the
Vegetable
their vegetable tray.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Yeah, I agree. That's what I'm gonna say. I agree.
Um, but then yeah, we have they're there with the intent of they've after they've had the birthday party for little Jacob, uh, they're there to kind of they're going for the trade of, hey, here's our firstborn child. If you'll call off the war, give up the anti-life equation, and just kind of hopefully put an end to all this. Um,
Yeah, and then from there that's when he pulls it like out of his eye, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I forget the Dark Sad, or sorry, Desad. I have the name written down here. This kind of, he seems to be almost like the attendant to Darkseid. This kind of like cloaked character, just in the corner, who's kind of explaining how the trade's going to work. But he mentions that the anti-life equation, since it is basically knowledge, Darkseid is unable to actually forget that knowledge, but as kind of a show of promise, he's going to remove one of his eyes, so he can't really, like fire off his Omega lasers, which, like if you've seen in other media, so these kind of like laser beams that you can kind of control that come out of his eyes. So kind of like, hey, here's kind of like this nuclear disarmament of sorts. So he takes out his eye and just like crushes it, then and there. And it's
Yeah,
kind
and I
of like
like the analogy they use when he's like, I can't give you the gun, but I can give you the ammunition.
exactly, yeah, yeah. So yeah, he even though he can't fully give up the anti-life equation, here's the next best thing that he can do. So they they're handing off the boy, and yeah, this is in where they kind of they show that that wasn't the full intent, that they're actually there to destroy dark side, and they use the miracle machine beam to kind of like gun him down.
Yeah, but he's like, isn't he like plowing through that?
And kind of, yeah, like he's tanking it for a bit there, but then he eventually kind of succumbs and falls to his feet. And when he's weakened, they use their own Farah knife, which Scott had created, because he knows that that's kind of like the one way to actually defeat him, And so
Right.
since he is the son of Darkseid, he is the only one that can actually defeat him. So he used the knowledge of creating that.
Well, okay, doesn't he use something of Orion's to make the knife?
Yeah,
though?
I think that it was like made from Orion, to actually kind of
So what I took from that then was like, it still doesn't answer the question of like, whose son is it? Because you were the son, but you killed him with the sun. Like,
yeah.
so
Although yeah, exactly, yeah. Like that, I think that's the thing. It's kind of the
factor?
best of both worlds. Yeah, like it kind of covers both bases of
Yeah.
is the just it being the biological father make him the son, or is it who's actually reared and raised by him? Although in this case, Scott Free wasn't actually raised by Darkseid. It was more by Granny Goodness.
Right.
So maybe that is kind of part of it too. But yeah, he uses parts from Orion to actually create this knife, and so it's the parts from the biological son, and the kind of raised and reared son, finally taking down Darkseid.
So yeah, you then wonder like, could Big Barda have killed him with that knife? Could Mr. Miracle have done it with a normal knife? Do you need both things?
Possibly,
That's
but
cool that it's open ended. Like,
exactly, yeah. But we definitely get the kind of like more poetic justice of son and son killing the father. So
yeah, so I like that they're. That's one of the few things that had a payoff at the end.
yeah, like that was a cool culmination. Like I definitely like this scene, or this one, not only just because of that, but it's also cool seeing Darkseid. I kind of liked their explanation of the anti-life equation, like the analogy of the gun and the bullets, and him taking out his eye. So it was a pretty cool issue for me, at least.
Well, I would say by far this was the best issue of the whole series.
Yeah, yeah. And then it ends with Metatron, who was we kind of see him throughout. There's visions that Scott has of him. He's almost kind of like trying to like warn him through time and space, like about like he shouldn't see the face of God. But here he is kind of revealing that there's kind of another world out there. We see almost kind of like the New 52 DC characters and like them existing, and he's kind of explaining that, hey, there's still worlds out there. So it's almost maybe like that's the view of the face of God. I don't know. That was kind of left open ended again. So
yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier with some of the stuff, like I'm not going to dive too much deeper into it because A, I don't know if it's worth it, and B, I'm not sure if I'll be happy with the answer if it is there. So I don't know.
Yeah, and issue 12 is kind of like an epilogue to all this. It's back on Earth.
Yeah.
They have cuts back to their life. Post this war, and them trying to raise little Jacob, while also kind of answering the questions of are they in hell? Are they in heaven? He's kind of has more of these visions from Granny Goodness. He has visions from the Forager and Orion, kind of explaining like, well, this is hell because they're stuck in it. There's kind of no way out. They're kind of just repeating this life over and over without really any say in it. Orion mentions that it's heaven because he's got his family. He no longer has to worry about this tireless war. He kind of actually gets to relax, and it definitely is left a little open ended. As to again, like this was kind of like feeding into as we've talked about at the start. Like, is this all like his purgatory? Is he just imagining this stuff? Is it all just part of his post-suicide like hallucinations, or like maybe this is also
Right.
like flashing in his mind, like right before he dies. So
Purgatory. That's the word I was looking for
yeah,
earlier.
yeah,
Thank you. Well, I said limbo, but purgatory is what I meant.
same difference.
Same difference. Yeah. So yeah, that was it in a nutshell. I think you did a really good job with thorough explanation. I couldn't be that thorough just because I didn't find it that interesting.
You were just here for dark side eating carrots, man, which I get. So
Yeah, which was cool. Oh, and my bug dude, I still like
yeah,
my bug.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like, oh, that's true. I forgot that. Yeah, we do get to see him one more time here. So yeah, the almost like the Force Ghost projection of Forager as like this vision that he has.
There, that's gonna be my first statue. We were talking about statues earlier. I want the Force Ghost.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I don't want a living version of the bug. Yeah, I want this this very specific view of him. So
I'll be the only person on the planet that wants one. I'll need it like commissioned to do that.
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it kind of wraps up. Back with the life of Barda, Scott, and Jacob, and then we kind of see that Barda is pregnant again. This time with a girl that they mention through the what are those scans called? When you're exactly, yeah, two guys, and we don't know what the hell it's called when they could see the baby.
Don't say it.
I know
ultrasound.
it's ultrasound. Thank you very much. Yeah, they're having the ultrasound, and the only thing that they're able to glean, not only that it's a girl, but also that she appears to be bigger than usual. Big Varda. Do you exactly? Yeah.
But that should be like adjusted for her size then. So
Exactly. Yeah, it's a normal one. Yeah, exactly. It should definitely cut with like a zoom in on Scott's face like that, and he just says, here we go again."
yeah, right. Yeah, that would
cut to
good.
credits. Yeah, exactly.
So what did you think? What would you, if you had to rank it on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give it?
I think we were using 5 as a scale just for the sake of consistency. Again, usually I'm more of an art-minded person with comics, so I definitely kind of dug the art. I know that you didn't. I'd say it's definitely up there, like 4, maybe 5. Like the different styles that they kind of use throughout this, the way in which they kind of break the narrative by using like full splash pages, or kind of the glitchy stuff, I thought was cool and interesting, although again, story-wise, didn't really pay off in the way that I hoped it would. So I still thought it looked cool and kind of had promise, but story-wise, maybe not that into it. Maybe closer to a 3, if not inching towards a 2. Again, like maybe it's just me. Like I definitely understand, and I know the place for like the kind of slice of life comics, and with ones like this, especially using like not completely unknown characters, but characters that people might not know otherwise, and kind of like retelling them and giving them a way in which we could jump on without having to know these like these decades of history beforehand, because we do get the Cliff Notes editions, like new characters that are introduced, like whatever we need to know about them, we find out, and the other stuff isn't really consequential. So it's fine on that regard, but I guess like I wasn't sure what to fully expect going into it, but maybe it was my own expectations that kind of damaged it. Of like, especially issue 1, like we kind of start seeing, like the panels of Darkseid is, like, is this going to be, kind of like a weird culmination when we meet Darkseid, like is he kind of pulling the strings behind this, and then accompanied with the kind of cryptic messages, the glitchy stuff, the whole Barda's eyes changing colors. I was like, oh man, is there going to be like a lot of like kind of like weird subtle stuff that's going on, and like it eventually pays off in the end that like it was a dream the whole time, or whatever it may be. So maybe it's my own fault for putting too much expectation on this, or thinking that it's gonna be something else. But yeah, for what it was, like I definitely get it, and there were some good moments of just kind of the juxtaposition, or just kind of interesting character moments. But overall, like I don't know how much it'll really stick with me. So
can I give you my opinion on it? Can I run to the bathroom first real quick though? Can you hold it down?
Sure, yeah. I'll give some shout outs to people again, yeah. So people are going to hang around a cliffhanger, yeah. But yeah, thanks again for everybody who stopped on by. Again, obviously we're talking about Mr. Miracle, the 2017 Tom King book. It was 12 issues. We had discussed it. Overall, it was basically just a slice of life story with the backdrop of superheroes. Johnny, I don't think was that big on it. I was, kind of hit or miss on some parts. It was, not every book that we're going to read on here will be amazing, or ones that we both absolutely love. This was one that was it had a lot of critical acclaim, especially for the writing and the art too by Mitch Gerads. But yeah, I don't know if it really stuck with us as much as the other ones. Again, as far as previous books that we'd done, we talked about Watchmen. It was Batman Year One, Thanos Quest, Marvels. Most recently, we had Transformers: More Than Meets the Eye, which we had Eric, the previous comic book manager, on, and he was the one that mostly kind of suggested the Tom King Mr. Miracle. So, but yeah, so we found out my thoughts. Johnny, final thoughts by you?
I would probably give it a 2 out of 5. Like it wasn't dog crap. I'm not going to say 1 out of 5 I hated it. Like I can see why people liked it. I just didn't, so I try to be more subjective in that regard. As far as the art goes, I'm not going to knock it for the art. It's just I would agree with what you were saying. Like if you're going to put in this glitchy stuff, have it have a payoff. Have it have purpose.
Yeah.
I think I would have given it more credit for that if there was a payoff, but I won't subtract any point.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah. It felt like that's the thing. Is it kind of like it was cool and all, but like again, like pretentious doesn't feel like the right word, but it felt like almost like unknowingly being a red herring of like kind of like making me like seem like, oh, this is gonna be like a cool comic because there's gonna be like some like some meta stuff that's going on, but then at the end of it, not so much.
It almost feels like, when you like watch a movie or a TV show even, and then you like, I don't know, you watch like deleted scenes later and you're like, man, that would have made some other stuff make more sense. Like, why did they take that out? I feel like there's like stuff like that. Like there's an interview with Tom King somewhere.
I was going to say, I think that they had, I know that they had this was around when DC was doing a few of these. Like they had them like the director cut #1 issues.
There was a director's cut of this.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's I think just of issue 1. And,
you're right.
Honestly, if it's like the other ones, they've done that for Dark Knight Metal and a couple other issues. But like to my knowledge of it, like it wasn't full on like Watchmen annotated or like the Marvels annotated stuff. It was more just kind of I don't know if there was any maybe deleted scenes, but I know that they just had like the scripts at the end, which like, hey, that's cool and all, and that might glean some kind of insight into it because like we, the scripts will usually like. The scripts, for those who don't know, like the writer will usually write up the script, which is basically like, hey, here's what's happening on this panel. Like, here's the dialogue. Here's kind of like some suggestions or guidelines on like, like make Mr. Miracle look angry on this one. Like obviously more into it than that, but like kind of explaining almost like the stage directions in like an actual script to the artist, so they know like. How to actually draw the scene and like what kind of intent to kind of put in it, like what kind of emotions that they want to have showing in the faces of characters, what action is happening, if any. So it is cool stuff, but not necessarily like a full-on kind of like annotation of like, here's what this scene meant and stuff like that. So
there's a director's cut of House of X1, and that was the first director's cut book I ever read, and what you just described, it's not like there was deleted scenes, but there was the script at the end, and at least for that story, it did answer a few questions because of what you're saying, where it actually, well, so-and-so's in the background, and you're like,
yeah, exactly.
In the picture, you didn't know, but in the description, now you know. So, but then, if it's only for the first issue, that's not going to give you a lot of insight for a 12-part series. Yeah,
I mean, maybe we'll have to wait till 2027 to get like the 10-year anniversary, which will have like the full-on annotations or fun stuff like that. But for what it was,
I would like to, if I could ever ask Tom King, like, was there more intent with some of this stuff? Like, just why? Just explain.
Well, exactly. Well, once we get him on the show, we'll sit him down and we'll ask him, like, hey, what was the deal with all the red herrings and Mr. Miracle? Like, why didn't you make it more like Fight Club?
And who the hell do you think you are making Batman kill babies? I'm going to say that to his face through a screen.
To his face through a screen. Johnny, I think that scene was lost on you. I think you're hating on Batman too much.
You're probably right. But I'm going to run with it.
Exactly. So. And speaking of running, it's just about time for us to run. But we do have to, once a week, since we're choosing books here, we do have to choose one more book. And I think I might have one up to T, so give me 1 second here to grab it.
Cool. All right, so it's just you and me and the rest of us here now because Mike's gone. What can I tell you about? Oh, today I was at the shop with Mike before I came home to film this, and we were putting together some more of those bundles. I think we're gonna have a lot more next week. If you joined us last night, we were auctioning off. First time we did it, we were doing a pull box of bundles. So what they are is I'm making single issue packages that are priced like half of what they're worth.
Yeah.
But it's a mystery bundle, but they're themed. So like, just for like an example, like I made like a modern day Spider-Man package, which has like a bunch of Spider-Mans. You don't know which ones. You just would get that in a pull box and you get random stuff. So I'm having fun creating these.
Yeah, definitely.
And they're cool. So I was telling everybody that like we're gonna have more of those next week, and I'm looking forward. I hope some people buy them because in my experience, like when people have offered me like mystery box stuff, I'm always like, but you don't know if you're getting anything good. So now that I'm the one who gets to put these things, I really try to make sure there's at least a couple of like really cool things in each one. Like you'd be happy just getting that, plus you get bonus stuff.
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, like the value is there, and yeah, like it is kind of a mystery to some degree, but you know, and again, we'll have talks on this next Tuesday of, you know, kind of like if people want to know the titles of it, if you just kind of care about like, hey, here's the price range, I'm down for whatever, and the value is also there too between, you know, like just either cool books or if nothing else, just, you know, like if it's like a $10 bundle, you know, like that you're paying $10, it's not going to be, you know, like here's a $5 book and a $5 book, you know, like it's we're trying to usually aim for, you know, closer to like double the value. So, you know, like you're spending $10 for $20 of value. You know, like, even though you may not know what it is, but, you know, like, again, it's thematically, it's not just, you know, grabbed randomly, you know, like we're trying to, you know, create kind of, you know, if it is, you know, like a sampler type bundle of like, you know, here's a way to, you know, like the modern Spider-Man, you're like, hey, here's maybe, you know, like issues from it. It's kind of like the most current ongoings and like a bunch of side stories. So, you know, you can kind of see, all right, here's the state of Spider-Man right now. And, you know, like, do I like this? Do I not? Is it worth it to, you know, like jump back in, get the other issues, either, you know, before or after this one, you know, and, you know, kind of going from there. So.
Well, and I got to say, man, like I know we talk about this a lot, but until I put that bundle together, I did not know how many Spider-Man titles there. Like I thought there was a lot of X-Men titles. There's like equally as many Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Maybe we'll talk about it next Tuesday with the state of Marvel and, you know, like what got cut and what's still kind of going on. But yeah, Spider-Man especially is one of the ones where, you know, like I joke about it here and there of, you know, like there's always like 5 ongoing Spider-Man stories, right? Like there's the actual Amazing Spider-Man ongoing, like maybe a couple other side ones, and then like, you know, 2 or 3, like 4 or 5 miniseries that are 5-part miniseries that are kind of going on. So
and and good on them. They're running with that Spider-Verse stuff. I mean, Spider-Man Noir is his own series.
Yeah, exactly.
Spider-Man has his own series. Spider-Gwen has her own series. Spider-Woman has her own series.
Yeah,
a lot of spiders, dog.
It's a lot of spiders. Man. Some might say too many. Maybe we'll talk about that on Tuesday.
Yeah, but what do you got for us? What are you thinking?
Speaking of last Tuesday, or well, yesterday for those watching, we had our comic auction. One of the bundles that we had there was the Junji Ito collection that was bought up. And I had alluded to the story Uzumaki by my boy Junji Ito. It's a thick one, but again, it's obviously kind of a quicker read. I don't remember it being like very dialogue heavy. It being a manga, like it's a lot about the visuals, black and white, with some bits of color, but it kind of will allow us to have a kind of different take on things. I think this is our first anime. We were talking about it too yesterday, that we were in kind of a weird anime and manga kick. So when we were talking about it, I'm like, even when we first started the book club thing, I always had this one in the back of my mind. Like, 1, because I wanted to definitely reread it. 2, because I think I asked you, have you ever read it before? So when you said no, I'm like, all right, well, it's a good excuse for me to be able to reread it.
Sure.
Fall back in love with it, and then also, you know, to kind of continue my my being able to kind of like push it on people whenever I get a chance.
Is there an anime that accompanies it or no?
So not an anime, but this one, I forget when the original Uzumaki came out. I think it was like late 2000s, and then also like a few years later, like in 2000 maybe 8 or 9, it might have been actually a little bit earlier. There was a movie that came out in Japan. It wasn't that good from what I remember seeing of it. You know, it wasn't the best adaptation of it, but, you know, again, like Junji Ito back then was Yeah, live action. Junji Ito back then was definitely a more known name, mostly in Japan, and like it wasn't until like the 2000s where he kind of started getting more footholds, with Western audiences, and if nothing else, just like translations of his work started becoming more popular. So he kind of spread to America. That's like kind of about when I started first seeing him on the internet, the forums that I was in back then, like talking about like cool horror comics, seeing scenes from it here and there, and eventually buying one for myself. And yeah, like I love all things horror comics, and like when it comes to like horror movies, I definitely like lean towards like the Japanese ones. So this was, it definitely kind of was pulling at a lot of things that I like. So this is definitely very much a very personal pick for me.
Sure.
And back when I started working at Pastimes as the comics manager, we didn't have a whole lot in the manga section, and I was starting to kind of expand on that and add more stuff into it. And one of the first things that I looked for was to see if through Diamond if we could order Junji Ito stuff. And when I saw that we could, I'm like, all right, well, I guess we're having everything that's Junji Ito at all times on our shelves, and it kind of became one of our top like 10 selling titles. Like anything like between Uzumaki, Gyo, and a bunch of his kind of like short story anthologies, those started selling more and more just because we had them, and I was able to like actually start pushing them on people. And like I think like once you sit down with it and kind of like even just skim through some of the art, one of the books that we had sold recently too was that art book. Like once you see his style and the kind of like creepy like angle that he has on that stuff, like I feel like it's kind of an easy way to kind of latch onto that. So I think for this next week we're probably going to be reading Uzumaki. So we've got extra copies. We've got extra copies at the store too. So if you're interested, if you're watching this now, feel free to message in the chat or shoot me an email, comics@pastimes.net, or come into the store and like if you're purchasing it, we'll be able to do a I'd say 20% discount on it for if you're getting it between now and next Wednesday when we have our book club. So if you've never read it before, I definitely suggest it. If you're into either mangas, horror comics, especially the both. If you haven't actually read Ito, I'd find that very hard to believe. He's kind of like the name in that, like he's probably the Stephen King of horror manga to some degree. So I definitely think it's worth it if you've never read it, or if you've read similar stuff and you want to kind of see one of almost like the grandfathers of it. So
I'm game, 100%.
So we'll have a copy here for you, and then again, for anybody who's interested, just let us know, shoot us a line, and I'll be able to get you a discount on that too, so you can read it. Again, like it is a pretty thick boy, but
manga reads so fast, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like
chapters of Berserk in like 3 days.
Yeah,
that's probably longer than that,
this one is definitely far more about what's going on in the scenes than the actual like dialogue itself. Yeah, like but there are still like cool concepts. Like every chapter ends on like a visual cliffhanger, so I don't know. It'll be fun for me to reread it, and then we'll see what Johnny thinks about it. But yeah, that's everybody's homework for next week. So Uzumaki, I believe it's 12 part like graphic novels. This is like the full collection. We've got again a couple of these. They are $27.99, and we'll be able to get you a discount on those too if you're buying it between now and next Wednesday. But yeah, thanks again for everybody coming out. That was our talk on Mr. Miracle by Tom King. Kind of a miss for us, but hopefully
it wasn't all the way down. There was angles.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully I think that will be Johnny will be reinvigorated by Uzumaki, Junji Ito's kind of magnum opus, or at least the work that he's most known for. Pretty prolific horror writer, but Uzumaki, I feel like, is when you talk about Junji Ito, where people should first start. So we'll see what he thinks about that. And you can join us back again next Tuesday at 8 p.m., where we'll be having more comic sales, auctions, dipping back into the Pastimes pull box, where we've got some cheaper options too for people to kind of buy in. I think we're going to try in some $5, $10 stuff, more $25 ones too. So, a quick way to, add some fun stuff while also us chatting about news and probably more tangents. So
probably more what?
Tangents about, what were we on about yesterday? Anime?
Oh, dude.
Oh, Dragon Ball. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, real quick. The reason I don't know if you noticed, I've yawned like 7 times. I'm not bored. I'm tired because I stayed up till like 2 a.m. watching the Genesis last night.
How far did you get?
I didn't. I think I'm only on episode 5 or 6.
Okay.
Out of 20,
Yeah, I was gonna say
26 episodes. Yeah.
that sounds about
And
right.
then there's the movies. So, Chuck, I'm still gonna need about 2 weeks, but I'm
shout
gonna probably
out to Chuck. Yeah, next Tuesday, I'm sure. Hopefully, Charlie will be back, and we can talk about where you're at with anime, and then we can kind of see where you're at about with this paper anime. See what you're liking with that one. I think you'll probably like it. But yeah, thanks again, Furby.
I haven't found many animes or mangas that I don't
Exactly.
like. So.
I don't think it's going to start with this one, unfortunately. So again,
Perfect.
thanks everybody for coming out. Feel free to stop by next Tuesday and Wednesday, where we'll be talking about more comics and talking about Uzumaki on Wednesday. And don't forget, not all heroes wear capes.